Hello friends and welcome to Edupedia World Videos. This is the course Linux Operating System Basics with Vagish Kumar, and right now what we'll be doing in this particular video is that we will learn how to configure a new virtual machine on the Oracle VirtualBox software. So this Oracle VirtualBox software we had installed earlier on our system, and we have also seen in a video how to configure your Oracle VirtualBox software for 64-bit operating systems. So in case you are still unable to do that, you can also install the 32-bit version of CentOS 7, and the links for 32-bit as well as 64-bit versions of CentOS 7 were shared earlier in the presentation that we did on Linux operating system prerequisites. To start the Oracle VirtualBox software, just go to the All Applications inside your Start menu and then navigate to Oracle VM VirtualBox and then click on the Oracle VM VirtualBox icon over there. So this will take around a few seconds and your VirtualBox screen should then pop up. So first of all, when you load this software for the first time, what you will see is that there will be a blank pane over the left side. Right now it is showing one virtual machine because I had already created one earlier, but you will not see any virtual machine listed over here. So what you can do is, after the screen loads, you can click on the new icon over here to create a new virtual machine. So first of all, you have to give a name to the virtual machine, then you have to select an operating system that you will be using. So in our case we'll be using Linux, and you also have to select the version of that particular operating system. So in our case we are going to use CentOS 7, but you won't have a particular option for CentOS 7. So what you will select is a generic version of Linux, either kernel version 2.6, 3.0 or 5.x. So these kernel versions are supported. In my case I have both the 64-bit as well as 32-bit options available over here. In case you have only 32-bit, you can try the method that we had done in a previous video, which shows how to configure your virtual machine for using 64-bit capabilities of your CPU. So that works only in case your computer's operating system as well as your processor are both 64-bit. So what you have to do is you will have to go to the BIOS of your system. There is a setting for virtualization, so you have to enable that option. So inside advanced BIOS options you will have this virtualization option which you have to enable. Okay, so once you have enabled it, most probably you should be able to see the 64-bit options over here along with the 32-bit ones. In case you have only the 32-bit options, you can very well go ahead with 32-bit version of Linux, and then you can install the 32-bit CentOS 7 version, which we had seen on the link in the presentation on Linux OS prerequisites. Okay, so in my case we will be installing 64-bit version of CentOS 7. So I'll choose 64-bit from over here, and the memory size, let me keep the memory size to be equal to 1024 MB. So in case you have less RAM, I have got 4 GB of RAM, so for that 1024 MB is fine enough. So it should generally be within this green line over here, within the green limit that you should allocate your RAM to your virtual machine, because this will actually use the physical RAM that is installed on your system. So it will use a part of it. So I have 4 GB, so I can use at least 1 GB in my virtual machine. But in case you have a less amount of RAM, so you can go down up till 512 MB also. So after doing this, you can choose a hard disk. So right now click on create a virtual hard disk now. Okay, so the other options are not of use, right? We don't want to continue without adding a virtual hard disk, and we also don't have an existing virtual hard disk, so we cannot use that either. So if you have some existing virtual hard disks, that will come up here in the options. So right now just go to the second option and go ahead with that. So let us name our virtual machine, say VM1, and click on create. So it will now ask for creating a virtual hard drive. So the location you can choose from over here. You can just click this icon and then the Explorer window will open. So in my case, the location, I will leave it to be default location only, which is C users and then the username and VirtualBox, and within that there is VM1. So in that folder only I will be creating my virtual hard disk. So initially allocate at least 20 gigabytes of space to your virtual hard drive, and I think that would be enough for us. And keep this option ticked so that it should be dynamically allocated, which means that in case you are not using the complete hard drive space like 20 GB, so the other space will be available for your guest operating system, for your host operating system. And as your guest operating system, which is the virtual machine operating system, keeps on using more and more space, it will start filling the actual hard drive. It will start taking more and more space. So initially it would begin by somewhere around 2 GB, and when you install the operating system, so that will start on increasing, and it will go to a maximum of up till 20 GB. So dynamically allocated is a better option, and you can leave this hard disk file type as default to be VDI, VirtualBox disk image. Then you can just click on create, and this will create your virtual hard disk, as well as your VirtualBox will virtual machine VM1 will appear over here on the left pane. So you can anytime click on start button, so it will just start your virtual machine VM1, and your console should appear within a few minutes over here. So apart from the console, you will also have an option to choose a CD-ROM or the DVD-ROM drive. So it gives you an option, either you can choose your hard drive, the host drive, the physical drive that is actually connected on your system, that is the F drive, or you can choose a virtual image, virtual disk image, like ISO image of operating system. That will be the same image as you will download it from the internet. When you download an ISO from the internet, that is a virtual copy of your CD on your hard drive. So you can use that by mounting that straight away in your virtual machine. So you do not need to burn it first to a DVD and then access it, but you can straight away mount that ISO itself. But if you want to burn it to a DVD and then go ahead, that is also an option. So you can just burn that ISO using a software to burn the disk. After burning it, you can insert it in your physical drive, and from here you can choose the host drive F. Right now what we will do is we will choose the ISO that is there on the disk. So I will choose the CentOS 64-bit ISO, CentOS 7 64-bit ISO that I had already downloaded from the link that I had shared earlier. So once I click open, so that will get mounted when I click start. So as soon as this disk gets mounted, so my CentOS, my virtual machine should boot from the hard drive. So what now I will have to show you is that once you click on your virtual machine, it displays over here that the auto capture of keyboard and mouse is turned on. So what does that mean is, because you are using the same hardware, you are sharing the same hardware between your guest operating system, which is inside the virtual machine, as well as your host operating system, which is inside your laptop. So when you click or when you try and use your mouse inside your virtual machine, it actually gets captured by the virtual machine, and you cannot move it outside of the virtual machine. Okay, so this is just to remove any ambiguity inside your ambiguity that is there between the two operating systems to share the same device. So it gets locked inside the virtual machine, and you can use it very well within the virtual machine, but you cannot use it outside of it. So to do that, what you have to do is you have to press the control button. By default, the control button is used to take the control back. So when you hit the right control button, so there are two control buttons on your keyboard, one is on the left side of the spacebar, one is on the right side of the spacebar. So by default, the right control key is used to get out of your virtual machine and to get your mouse back to the host operating system, and you can do anything on the Windows operating system then. But if you click on it, you cannot move your mouse outside of your guest operating system at that point of time until you click control. Okay, so back to our installation. Here is the CentOS 7 boot menu in front of our screen, and we should straight away proceed with install CentOS 7 option. So as you press enter, it will start loading the setup software, which is the GUI to install. So let us wait for it. Okay, so it has started logging some things. So these are default kernel logs that it prints before booting up. So it is saying starting the installer, please wait a moment. So Anaconda, with the name that you could have read earlier on the previous screen on the bottom left. So Anaconda is the name of the default installer for your Linux installations. Okay, so here is your virtual machine. Let me maximize it and let me turn the mode to full screen mode. So host plus F. Host key is the right control key that we have just discussed. So when you press host plus F, it will go on to switch to the full screen mode, and when you again select host plus home or host plus F, you can get back to the normal mode. So control F will again turn your screen to the normal mode, and remember that only right control will work, not the left control key. Okay, so let me go back to the full screen mode so that the view is more clear. So here is the default option to choose your default language, and let me choose English India over here and click on continue. Okay, so now it is proceeding further with the installation. Okay, so it is asking me to configure various things. So it has already selected the date and time as Asia Kolkata, and the keyboard layout is also selected, language is also English India, the installation source is also selected because it is the CD drive which has been mounted. So it is now asking me for installation destination. So I have to select the hard drive that we have just created. So it is appearing over here as ATA VirtualBox hard disk, and the size is 20.48 GB. So let me click on it and select it. So once it is checked, that means that it will install on this particular drive, and it is asking me to automatically configure partitioning, or I will configure partitioning myself. So since we have to learn how to partition, we will choose I will configure partitioning myself. Otherwise, if you don't want to learn, we just want to install it quickly, we can also choose automatically configure partitioning. But I will configure partitioning is the right option for us at this point of time. Okay, so now what we can do is you can also select this option, full disk and summary bootloader. So it will tell you what is your disk that is being installed, and it will give more detail about the disk name and the capacity of that. So your bootloader will also be installed on this disk only. So here, over here, what you can do is you can click on done, and your installation will begin further. So it will first ask you to create a partition layout. If you will click here, it will click that partition layout automatically. Otherwise, what you can do is you can then select your own layout. So what we will do is we will first add a new partition. So we have decided earlier, also we have learned in the Linux installation prerequisites tutorial, that in Linux your partitions are mounted on the folders. Okay, so there are three most critical partitions that you should always make when you are creating or you are installing a Linux system. So the three necessary partitions are root, boot and swap. Okay, so apart from that, you can also create home and /root. So all these various mount points, you can also create a partition for them. but right now we will create only 3, which are root, boot and swap. So first of all, let me create the boot system, and the desired capacity for that should be 500 megabytes. Let me click on add mount point, so it will be boot, and let me give it a label also, boot. File system for this can be any one of those, so it's better to select ext3 for the boot OS. Okay, so similarly now I will add another partition. First of all, let me click update settings so that this partition gets fixed. Now I will add another partition, which will be the swap partition. So for that there is no mount point available, you just have to click swap, it will not be mounted. So our RAM is 1 GB. So in our tutorial on Linux installation prerequisites, we had learned that boot should be not more than 500 megabytes, and the swap space, there is a particular rule that you have to follow. There are, although you will find different versions of this rule online when you will search on Google, and in different books different versions will be mentioned, but the partition scheme that I follow and I recommend that you should follow is that if your RAM has a size of less than 4 gigabytes, you should make the swap size as double the amount of RAM. So if you have say 2 GB of RAM, then your swap size should be 4 GB, and if you have 1 GB of RAM, your swap size should be 2 GB, and so on. So in case your RAM is from 4 GB to 8 GB, so you should, in that case, you should keep it fixed at 8 GB. So 4 GB plus, you should keep your swap space as 8 GB, okay, for any RAM greater than 4 GB. So right now our RAM is 1 GB, so we should keep the swap space as 2048 MB, which is equal to 2 GB, 2 gigabits, because 1 GB is equal to 1024 MB. Okay, so now just click over here and swap space, and everything is fine. So that partition has also been created. Label should be swap. Okay, now we will create one more partition, which is the root, and root, for the root mount point is just a backslash, just a forward slash. Okay, so forward slash is the mount point for our root partition. That is the, you can say, the parent of all the other folders. That is the parent folder of all the other folders, just like your My Computer inside Windows, in which various partitions can be seen. There is a backslash, forward slash inside your Linux, in which you can, under which you can have the rest of the directory structure. So all the mounted partitions can be seen inside this forward slash partition. So you will come to know more about it when you will actually do this practical on Linux commands. So we'll be reaching very soon to that level also. So the desired capacity should be all the remaining capacity that is available over there. So we can see over here that 17.92 GB is available. So let me write here as 17.92 GB, and let me click on add mount point. So my partitioning layout is now complete, and the label, you can keep it as root. Okay, so now your complete partitioning is done. So you have got 3 partitions over here. One is the boot partition, which also lies inside your mount point root. Okay, so this partition has 500 megabytes of space. What is the purpose of this partition? It is that all the bootable code of your Linux operating system will lie over here. So initially your kernel will be loaded from this particular partition, and then it will go on to the RAM, and then the actual booting process will begin. So this is your root partition. So this will be the you can say the parent of all the other folders inside your Linux system is this one. So all other partitions will be mounted within this partition. Then there is swap, which is nothing but the partition for virtual memory. So the concept of virtual memory would be clear to you if you had done some study on the operating system as a subject. What is virtual memory? It is just that it is a way to increase the capacity of your random access memory or your RAM. So what it does is that some part of the RAM is actually kept on your hard drive. So suppose your RAM is 100 MB. Okay, so because your programs that would be loaded onto your system would obviously be more than 100 MB, so they can be 500 MB or 1 GB also, but at one particular moment of time you will be using only one or two of those programs, and one or two would be running at the background. So all those might not collectively need your complete 1 GB of memory. Okay, so if you have 1 GB of memory installed for that case, then your most of the memory would be wasted. But in our case, we won't have 1 GB of memory installed for that case. We will have only 100 MB of memory installed, and rest of the space would be on the hard disk. So what will be done is that whatever program is running at the foreground, whatever program that user is using at that point of time, will be allocated a space in the RAM, and other programs, their context will be copied to the virtual drive, this swap space. And as soon as the user switches the program from one program to other program, that particular program's pages from this swap space, all the data will be loaded into the RAM, and the data which is presently into the RAM will be stored into the swap space. So this virtually makes your RAM increase in size. Okay, so if you have 1 GB of RAM, you can rather have double of that as the swap space, so it increases the capacity of your RAM in one way. Okay, so once we have done the partitioning, what we can do is we can now click on this done, and it will just display some logs. Okay, so after selecting all the other things and creating your partition layout and selecting the installation source, the installation source is actually automatically selected as the local media, which is the CD drive which you have just mounted. So what you have to do is you can select the software. Earlier by default it is set as minimum installation, but we do not want it to be a minimal installation, so there are various options available. First is the infrastructure server. So in server you'll have some additional things that are needed for a server, but you won't have the graphical user interface. And then you can have a file and printer server where you can connect your printers to, and the complete office can use your printer from there on. You can have also a web server, basic web server, but what we want to do is we want to select a desktop. So you can either select a GNOME or a KDE desktop. Right now we will go ahead with the GNOME desktop, and in that also you have a number of applications that you can select. So I'm going to select the set of GNOME applications. Then internet applications also you can select, but right now we do not need any, so I'm not selecting that. Apart from that, you have compatibility libraries, so you should select them, and development tools in case you want to use your server for development purposes, for development of C or C applications or some such applications. Okay, so I think that is the software that we can select over here. So once you have selected the required software, what you can do is you can click on this done button over here, and your software installation is will start when you actually click on begin installation, but till that time it will just calculate that okay, all the software that you have selected is available on the local media or not. So that is why you had earlier seen those exclamation marks, orange exclamation marks, which were visible over there. But now it has verified that all the software that we have selected to install is actually available in our installation source. We have just in a few seconds back, we have also configured our partitioning layout. So you can also configure your network at this point of time if you want to. So to configure your network, just click on the network configuration, and here is our Ethernet adapter. So let us turn it on. Okay, and then you can configure it from here if you want to, but we will not be configuring it from here right now at this moment. I'll show you how to configure your laptop from inside the Linux operating system GUI, and then we'll also learn to configure the network through the CLI options. So in case you want to configure it from here, you have an option. You can add your Ethernet IP address, and you can create various profiles. So in IPv4 settings, just select manual, and when you select manual, then you can add IP address over here along with the net mask and gateway and DNS server and all the configurations that are required. So I am not doing this right now. I am not configuring the network right now. I'll be doing it only after my system is installed and I log into the graphical user interface of the system. So now just click on begin installation, and you can proceed further. So meanwhile the installation continues, what you can do is you can create a root user as well as a normal user account you can create over here. So what is the root user? Root user is the default administrator of a Linux operating system. Just like you have an administrator user inside Windows who can install all the software, who can configure the rights for other users and create a user, create a new user, delete a new user. So all these tasks, which are known as the administration tasks, can be performed by an administrator user. Similarly, in Linux you have a root user, and the default home directory for the root user is / and then root, ROOT. That also we will see once we log in into our system. So here it is asking you to enter a password for the root user. So you cannot change the name for the root user, it remains root only. So you can enter a password. So let me enter the password for my root user as CentOS123. Whatever you want, you can enter it. Okay, so once you enter the password, just click on done. So it will say that your password is quite weak, so just to confirm it, if you want to use a weak password, click done twice. So right now I don't want to go into a complex password and create a complex password, because I know that this is a local virtual machine that I'm using and no one is going to hack it anyway. So I'll just use a weak password and click done. Apart from that, you have this default user creation that you can create a user for yourself. So you can give it your own name, or you can write any other name you want. So let me create a user as Edupedia, and you can make this user an administrator too if you want. So right now I'm not making it as an administrator, and you can give it any password, 12345 12345. So again it will say that the password which you have chosen is actually weak, but we will continue with a weaker password only. It hardly would matter to us. Okay, so just click done twice and your password has also been created for the Edupedia user. So you have created 2 users, and now the only thing that we have to do is we have to wait till the installation is complete. So it has to install 1322 packages in total, and right now it has just installed close to 400 packages. So it will take some time. Till that time, what we can do is we can just wait. So I'll stop this video over here, and will, as soon as my installation completes, I'll start recording again.